to look at how the current charter school system is being implemented, and if there needs to be changes. If there needs to be changes, what I've been calling for is a moratorium on charter schools. So we're going to be talking about that, and we invite you to be part of the conversation by calling in 317-239-1310. And you can also listen in, or you can also comment on our Facebook page as well. Let us pray. Father God, Lord, we just want to thank you, Lord, for this day. Lord, we ask in the name of Jesus, Lord, that you just lead, guide, and direct us on tonight, Lord. We pray for our conversation, Lord. We pray specifically, Lord, for our students, our children, Lord. We pray in the name of Jesus, Lord, that you lead and guide us on today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and I just want to say good evening. And we just want to welcome everyone once again to the Concerned Clergy radio show. And on tonight, we're going to start right there. We're going to start talking about charters, and then later on in our after hour at the 8 o'clock hour, we may have a guest there as well. So stay with us, and we will have a little surprise for you then as well. But we've got an issue. There's an issue that's going on here in which there is a director of a charter, an executive director that has used the N word in front of students. And it has caused an outcry from the community, from the parents, and this executive director, Nathan Tuttle, has been put on administrative leave from the charter, and that being the Edison School of the Arts, formerly School 47. And that is a recent charter. That charter just started, I believe, just this calendar school year. If you look at their application as it was submitted to be a conversion school, that being a conversion school for an innovative school in the IPS district as a charter. We're going to look at their application and kind of what it says. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper than just the issue that's going on with Mr. Tuttle. Now, the issue here with Mr. Tuttle, that certainly is an issue for our concern. When you have administrators, especially lead administrators, that feel comfortable in using such language in front of students, that is a reason to call for a cause of concern. That is definitely a reason for the outcry, what has happened, at least with the parents, the community, in regard to that situation. What you hear and what's been reported, some of the staff says this runs deeper than one, just this incident, and two, Mr. Tuttle. According to the staff, this is a deeper issue. There are other issues that are prevalent within the Edison School of Arts that need to be addressed, and the staff, and I want to highlight that the staff is speaking out and saying we have issues. That's what the staff is doing. And with that, I would say that we need to listen to our staff members that are brave enough to speak out. We need to listen to them. We need to hear what their experiences are. We need to listen with a keen ear and not just brush it off. Of course, we do have disgruntledness, in the ranks. But I think you should be able to separate the two, decipher between the two, and be able to do what's right by our students. But once again, we have this issue here at the Edison School of Arts. And we have the administrator, the main administrator there. The director is using language that should not be using the N word in front of students. And now the question is, what is the future? What's the future of his role within Edison School of Arts? Many are asking more from the board of directors, and there many are actually asking for the board to do more than just suspend Mr. Tuttle. Many are asking for a termination of his contract. Some are saying that if the board does not act, that they think that the board needs to be terminated. You're hearing a lot of that now. That's a lot of the discussions that's going on. But I think there is an even deeper issue. Once again, we have staff members that are speaking out, that are sharing that there's much more that they are saying needs to be looked at. But I want us to, as we conversate on tonight, and we invite you to be part of the conversation by calling in 317-239-1310. Or you can also comment on our Facebook page. But I want to bring this, if you will, full circle and tie it into our discussion on last week, in which I called for a moratorium on charters, and I gave reasons why I thought that moratorium should be in place, including the fact that we have so many unanswered questions in regards to the overall charter system, and we're having those that are lobbying and advocating for charters to receive dollars from the IPS referendum if it is successful when it comes to be voted on. And the questions being has been asked, well, do they deserve that money? And for the most part, those that are advocating are saying they deserve that money because of the fact that they are public schools. But I reminded us on last week that charter schools, as they came to be, and they've been in Indiana since the early 2000s, 2001, as they came to be with the thought that they would be able to act independently. They would act independently, they would be funded independently. But now what we're finding is that we have lawmakers, we have advocates saying that no, we need to give charters money. Last week, I talked about the Him by Her Academy. We went through their charter application. We looked at their board members. We looked at their structure. We looked at their structure being one in which the board members, the executive director in that case being a detective, and his wife, there was no extensive educational or academic background between the two of them or the board members. I think there were like 9 board members that we looked at that founded that particular school. Out of the 9, there may have been 2 that had some limited educational experience, but the rest was just like any other corporate board. Dave Calabro, who's a sportscaster. You had Jason Gardner, who's a basketball player coach. There were some bankers, your typical board makeup. That school, Him by Her, closed just a few weeks ago. That school closed in the middle of the school year. The parents were notified in December that their school was going to be closing, and just before the holidays, they had to scramble and make other adjustments and had to had to find schools, and not just any school, but try to find quality schools for their students. So that happened. Um, and as we looked through their charter application, we found out things such as that. And I think that's conducive to the failures of charters. Last week, we talked about there were 23 charter schools that closed the calendar years 2011 through 2017. Those school calendar years, 23 charters in Indianapolis, Marion County closed. What about the previous years? What about the subsequent years? Those numbers, I'm sure, are going to grow. But I want to tie what we talked about last week, the charter application, and we're going to look at the Edison School of Arts charter application. But before we do that, I do see that we have a caller that's on the line. Let's go ahead and bring our caller in. We've got Imani. Good evening, Imani.
Yes, good evening. So, oh my goodness, I have so much to say. So, the first thing I was calling to discuss was the language used towards the students by this school administrator. And the fact that, I keep hearing people say, oh, parents are upset, parents are outraged. Parents should be outraged. The community should be outraged. Every single one of us should be outraged, especially those of us um, in the black community, because what I do know from being in education, being in the school system, being in those classrooms with those kids, and seeing a lot of people, in particular, I'm just going to just be very raw, seeing a bunch of white people come into the school district to either work as administrators or to work in the classroom with those students, and not really coming in because they have a desire. And I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying the majority of what I saw coming in, not really having an understanding any cultural relevance, cultural sensitivities, um, but coming in and feeling superior to our children, not just because they are adults, but there is this whole racial climate that's there. I witnessed myself being one time in the classroom. I had a student, and this I was acting behavior dean. I had a student who kept coming and saying that the teacher would not let him in, and every time he went to the door, the teacher just shut the door in his face. Now, you're thinking, no, this can't be so, but I walked the kid down to the classroom. I went to put the kid back in the class. I said he couldn't be out in the hall. I was told by the teacher he could not come back in. She didn't want him back in there. And I said, well, he can't be out here. She walked from her desk, from the back of the room to the front of the room to the phone, called the principal. And while I was standing there, while she's looking at me in my face, told the principal that she had a student who was trying to come back in her classroom, who was being disruptive, and he was standing at her door right now calling her bees. And now this is what she was saying while I am standing in front of her, as if I'm invisible. And the student starts to go crazy. And I'm like, no, calm down. I had to go downstairs and talk directly to the principal. Our principal was black. I had to go and talk to her and tell her that that was a lie. This is also the same woman who walked out and left the entire classroom unattended because she just was tired of dealing with these kids. They act like animals. So not only do they call our children animals, not only do they lie on our children, they call them names and say things that are absolutely inappropriate, but there was no correction. Now this happened at a charter school. I was working at a public school. Is where I was working when this took place. I was blessed that the principal that we had, she she did deal with the matter, and that next school year that teacher was not picked up. But the problem is they come and work in the inner city schools. They come work in the inner city schools. They get their loans, part of their loans relieved, or all of their loans relieved, or they get the school district pays for them to get their license, their administrators. So they're coming and basically draining the dollars, and then they'll leave and go and teach out in the township schools where they want to be anyway. They don't want to be with our children, and because there are no strict consequences. He shouldn't be on administrative leave. Administrative leave with pay, so you're going to be paid, and we're going to pay you And to me, that's like saying that your behavior, yeah, okay, was kind of bad. We'll send you home for a little bit, but we still gonna make sure that you can eat, you can feed your family. But we're not addressing the damage that is being done to our children. That is why we still have a school to prison pipeline. This is so deep and it is so very real that you actually need to do an entire show just on that.
All right.
It
Well,
is that
you're
deep.
right, Amani, and I feel your passion. I'm passionate there with you. Thank you for your phone call, and we'll definitely continue to pray for you and your student and all of the students that you're coming in contact with that they are getting fair treatment. So, thank you once again, Amani, for calling in. And we have a comment on our Facebook page also saying that you need to tell them to give the money back. And that's something a lot of charters are getting funding. That is a piece of accountability that, as our the comment that's made on our Facebook page, that's a piece of accountability that needs to be raised, and that's why we need a moratorium. We need a moratorium to discuss how do we deal with that. And then, is that an option to take that money back? I know Amani was talking about the money that and the loans that the teachers have, and that they are able to get their loans forgiven and things like that. But we also have those charter, those fellows, those ones that are starting the charters up, and they are getting funding as well. And I'm hearing figures up to $9 million that some are getting, and they are having loans too as well in order to start their charters in some cases, and those things need to be looked at. Another reason why we need a moratorium is the fact that as we are looking at charters, the top two things, the top two things that they say they're going to do: performance, and to be able to sustain themselves financially. Those are the top two things you hear from charters. We're going to be better performing schools. We can do it cheaper. Matter of fact, we can do it with our own funding. Those two things are the primary things you hear from charters. But you know what? Those are the top two things they're failing at. They're failing at performance. Their performance, if you look at all the recent data says their performance is worse than IPS. That's why we need a moratorium. We need to look at those numbers, better evaluate them, especially as we're talking about giving them money. The dollars, we need to look at that as well. We do have another caller on the line. We've got Guy. Good evening, Guy.
Hello.
Hi
Good
there.
morning. Listen, it seems like this is a continuing story for years and years and years about the schools. But to your knowledge, who is taking care of accountability? Uh, who, in other words, the general public that doesn't necessarily have students in the school system uh, just doesn't know. But it seems to me there should be some type of agency or rating or something where the general public can go and say, "Well, show me your results. Show me the beef, so to speak. What's happening with the students?" Uh, to your knowledge, is there such an agency? And if not, maybe the concerned clergy could uh, kind of bird dog some of these things. What do you think?
All right. Well, thank you so much for your question and your comments, and calling in. Continue to do so. Thank you. So with that, there is we have the Indiana Department of Education. So we have that is who's in place, if you will. In regards to the data that is to be submitted. You also have the Indiana Charter School Board. So there is a charter school board that's in place, that is supposed to also look at those. And then you also have the individual boards for the charters If it's an IPS charter, which it is in the case of the Edison School of the Arts, then you have the IPS board as well. Here's the issue, though. The issue is, although you have all that stuff in place, charter schools are not held to the same accountability in what they have to submit and the data that they must share. A lot of that they are able to keep close to the vest. You don't hear, you don't see, you'll see gaps, if you will, Guy. You'll see gaps in the data submitted. Sometimes you won't see any data submitted. Now, as part of the accountability piece and bringing charters on board, that is a piece of it. They're told they have to be held to certain academic standards and things of the sort. And there are some baseline, I'll say, accountability measures there, but there's not the same level of accountability as you would imagine. Some of the things that you're talking about, you would think are just automatic, but charter schools do get a pass. So, and a lot of that is because they're hiding behind the fact that yes, we're private. When you look at the marketing, all of their marketing is well, we're standalone and we're private. That's what they all do. So we're going to once again. I have the Edison School of Arts. Conversion application is what they call it because they were already a school, but they were converting to a charter school. We're gonna bring that up and talk about that. There's some interesting language in there I want you to hear. And then we also have callers that have been holding. So we're going to go ahead and take our break. And then when we come back, we'll pick up you callers. And then let's dig a little bit into this application from the Edison School of the Arts. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 92.7, and 95.1 FM The Light. Welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. If you would like to contact the Concerned Clergy, you could do so by sending an email. Our email address is clergyindy@gmail.com. You can also phone the Concerned Clergy, and that number is toll free 1 800 771 4061. 1 800 771 4061. We're just talking about charter schools on today, as we picked up from last week and the call that I've put out for a moratorium. There's been a lot of discussions going on actually since we discussed this on last week. I've seen so much from an advocacy standpoint in support of charter schools. I've seen lots of, especially I'll say, organizations from a charter organizational standpoint that are definitely, I'll say, pushing hard for funding, especially funding such as what IPS is seeking in the referendum, and giving that to charter schools. And the primary reason that they're giving us is that they're public. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to dive into the application for the Edison School of Arts. That's where there's an issue currently going on there, in which their executive director, Nathan Tuttle, has been put on administrative leave, paid administrative leave, as they are dealing with the situation in which he used the N word in front of students. So they're dealing with that. But I think there's a deeper issue. As staff is saying, there's a deeper issue there in the Edison School of Arts, but there's also a deeper issue when it comes to charters. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we continue on in our conversation. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, once again, feel free to call in 317-239-1310, 317-239-1310. We do have Mayhem on the line. Mayhem, good evening.
My friend. How's it going, my friend? Hey, Amos was trying to warn us about this, but we didn't take heed. A couple of people years ago tried to warn us. We didn't take heed. I just don't understand this culture of parents. They just go to the new shiniest building and let strangers abuse their kids, and then they want to complain about it. A simple thing about the man that's using the N word. I would take my child out and would let my child go back until he was fired. But I bet you they gonna send their children right back to get abused. I just understand that him by her school. It was a lot of people who was trying to warn people about them people, and I don't know. And these people been real quiet, and I don't know why we're not people not looking for them. It's a shame that taxpayers have to get our money waste by these average leaders. The city is going down, and it's about leadership. Every time we talk about something, it's dealing with poor leadership. I just don't understand what is going on and why people are not stepping up. The only ones that are going to make the change is the taxpayers and the parents. Why are we letting strangers abuse our children? This, like I said, this culture of parenting is this. I feel for these children that we don't protect them. Thank you, my friend.
All right, thank you as well. My heart bleeds as well, man. I have to be honest. I'm passionate about this because it's personal to me. I'm not going to get into that piece of it tonight, but it's very personal to me, and I'm going back to when I was growing up. So that's why when I see what's happening, I look at it and I say there has to be change. Because, if I can say this is how it was, or here was my experience, and I see that it's gotten worse, it's getting worse, and I have to agree with Mayhem, the same sentiment, and the same feeling. We've got to, the community, first of all, has to understand exactly what all of this means. And Mayhem, and to our callers, I think that is I think that's an issue. I think it's a huge issue, just really having an understanding. Mayhem started out saying he doesn't understand why parents send their children to these new schools, with these shiny and He kind of used language like, what you promise, all this new stuff. That is the heart, pretty much, of humanity right now. Everybody wants the newest, the nextest, the biggest, the best. The next iPhone, the next new Jordans, the next new this. That is feeding to the psyche of folks. You want that new one without really knowing what that new thing is going to do. Um, and our children are suffering for it. In one aspect, in one aspect, you can say that, yeah, when charters come on, they are better equipped. In a lot of cases, there are some resources there. Um, there are, some things in place, and they are getting. You will see that the classroom sizes are smaller, but the things that they advertise and tout is what's killing the charters. The class sizes is hurting them. They can't maintain it. Now, I promise you this actually several minutes ago, and I'm definitely going to talk about it now. When we look at the application for the Edison School of Arts, here's what they said. It says, while the flagship school is currently within the IPS LEA, we are seeking to convert Edison flagship campus to a charter as the current innovation contract with the district is financially unsustainable within 5 years. Here's the next sentence. And this next sentence is where most charters, in their applications, this is what they tell us. They tell the community. They told us this from day one. It says, as a standalone charter school or out of LEA charter partner to the district, we would receive the financial resources necessary to fully resource our students and staff and keep our commitments to our families. They're telling you that they're able to do it on their own. They say they can stand alone. Not only that, they say we've got the resources that we can fully resource our students and staff to keep our commitments to the families. They're saying we can't sustain ourselves within IPS, but we can do it outside of IPS. There's a whole lot to ask there. One, why do you have legislators now saying give charters more money when charters are telling you we can do better without it? That's why we need a moratorium, because we really need to look and say, is that actually true? And then two, if they're going to say they can do it, why aren't they doing it? And then when we have such things such as closures, if the charter can't sustain themselves, shouldn't the whoever is backing that charter, shouldn't they be responsible for at least having an insurance policy, if you will, that such things such as an in the middle of a school year closure does not happen? There needs to be a moratorium because we need to look at that role. So um, that's what we need to do. We're looking at that now. There's some more pieces we're going to look at when we come back from our break. And what is going to tie into the him by her as we look at the Edison School of Arts conversion application. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, feel free to call in 317-239-1310. 317-239-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 92.7 and 95.1 FM, The Light. Welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and if glad to be your host on this evening. And we've been talking about charters tonight. We've been talking about charter schools. We've been talking about the Edison School of Art situation, in which their executive director has been placed on administrative leave. We've been talking about that situation as well as how it ties overall to, I'll say, an overall larger issue in regards to the charter school system as a whole. Why my call for a moratorium is necessary, why we should be looking at such things such as why charters are founded the way that they're founded, how they're going to be sustained. Last week we talked about the fact that there were 23 charter school closures in Marion County in the calendar school years between 2011 and 2017. 23. We do not have the data for the years before that or after that. So there needs to be some discussion of one, what's the real data, why the closures, and what are we getting wrong. Last week we brought up the Fairbanks report from November of 2022, in which the Fairbanks report, and this report, mind you, the Fairbanks report from 2022, this report, if you look at the language in the report and you look at a lot of the legislative acts that you're finding on the Democratic side, you'll see some similarities there. You'll actually see that a lot of what they've been asking for is a result of what came out in that Fairbanks study from November of last year. So you'll see a lot of you'll see some themes there, if you will, as far as how to lessen the gap that the Fairbanks report highlighted. The Fairbanks report said that there is a growing gap in disparities between minority students and Caucasian students. Said there is a growing gap, and they showed us all the data, the numbers, and in addition to that, the Fairbanks report said that that gap has widened since the pandemic. Says that gap is widened. One of the issues that we're having in education is I think there's already a feel that there's a separation of dollars when you have a lot of private companies that are giving and donating dollars towards charters, and then you have public schools such as IPS that seems to be suffering or seems to be lacking in resources. And as IPS is asking for resources, you have a lot of advocates that are really lobbying and advocating for legislators to pass language and laws that says that charters are deserving of public funding solely for the reason, and I want you to all get this, solely for the reason that they're public. That's the only reason. However, what you don't hear anyone saying that we are going to give the reporting such as the public schools do. You don't hear such things such as, well, the private funding that we're receiving, we're going to continue to receive that, and then we're going to share it. You don't hear such things as really an admission to the fact that we can't sustain ourselves. And let's remember, we have a lot of advocates saying that the charter schools deserve it. We just read in the Edison School of Arts, a conversion application, they specifically said that they needed to be on their own or as a charter innovative school for the sole purpose so that they can receive that funding. And they said that they would be able to fully sustain their funding. I mentioned earlier that there was some commonalities when we looked at the boards once again from him by her, and we look at the startup board here for Edison. I mean, when we looked at the Edison board, we find that the executive director at that time, which is no longer the executive director, she had no education experience. You'll see there the other board members. There wasn't any educational experience. There was some dance experience. You did see some director of marketing and promotions experience for a radio station. You did see some other maybe corporate experience. But what we did not find is really when you look at overall and you look at what a board should be, especially when we're looking at the education of our students, our board structure is lacking. Our board structure is lacking. Uh, when we look at the fact that a board such as this, a board such as him by her, in a lot of cases, the boards are funded or are founded for the sole purpose of funding, for fundraising. As a matter of fact, and I've never heard the outcome, but him by her had a fundraising event just prior to the holidays. I'll say around the September time frame, September October time frame in the fall. Him by her had, or at least had a fundraiser scheduled. So what was interesting in the timing um, is that that either says that that was not a successful fundraising event. Was it put in place for the sole reason that there was such an issue? And then why was that issue not brought forth and handled earlier? Well, when we look at the board as it was structured, and we look at the Edison School of Arts, we are lacking the same expertise from an academic perspective that's necessary. We we get caught up in the newness. We, in a lot of cases, get caught up in and charters. Once again, they come in. They have pretty much the same language because in a lot of cases they're asked for the same information. So they kind of have a template to follow, a template that tells them here is the information that's going to be needed and required. Here's the information that they're going to have to provide as part of that initial application or in the event of Edison School of Arts, it was their conversion application converting to an innovative school. But it's in there that that when we see that we're bringing these entities together, that the sole focus and what you need, the expertise that you need from a primary perspective or overall perspective, is you need that educational experience. You need that. Fundraising is great, and I know it's a key component and piece of sustaining that school. But what we can't do is just keep throwing dollars at failing schools. We don't do that in the business world. We don't just keep giving dollars to businesses with failing leadership when the leadership is not adequate. As a matter of fact, in most cases, you don't even invest in those companies without having the knowledge, the people with knowledge, knowing that they can actually build the business, sustain the business, and oh, yes, they can get funding for the business. But you just can't throw dollars at anything and then think it's going to be successful. That's what we found. That's what we're finding as we look at these charter schools, as we look at, once again, we have IPS that's asking for public funding. They're asking for referenda dollars, but yet we have these advocates across the state that are advocating that a portion of those dollars go to charter schools. The community needs to be educated. The community needs to understand why we can't just do that. One of our earlier callers mentioned the fact that, in its true statement, that maybe the public at large doesn't have maybe students that are, in, that age where they're going to a public school, charter school, or you may not even be, you may be in a township and you think it doesn't apply to you, but it's very important that we watch what happens, because slowly but surely you're seeing more charter operators are seeking to get into the townships. You're seeing that, as they're advocating for more dollars, that those it, if those lobbying, all of that action, if it's successful, and it's very possible that it could be, that's going to affect our students across the board, whether they're township or whether they're IPS. As a community, we have to be watching. We have to understand. We have to look at it as to why certain individuals or groups supported the referenda before, and yet they have withdrawn their support now. Think of it this way: what you don't hear people saying that we're withdrawing our support because of the poor performance or anything like that, or that IPS wasn't utilizing the funds appropriately. No, they're withdrawing support because they're saying we want some of the money. They're saying some of that money needs to go over here. That's why they're withdrawing support. So, and and I said this last week. What we did not ask. Well, let's back up. What IPS did is they had their building stronger plan. They had to go to the community. They had to share their rebuilding stronger plan with the community. They had to let the community vet that plan. Now, I'm not here to once again criticize the plan or glorify the plan. The fact is, they had a plan, they presented the plan, and then with that, you can, and we can, as the public at large, we can now weigh in as to whether or not we accept the plan as it is, or whether that there needs to be adjustments to the plan. And that's exactly what happened in the case of IPS. There was some public comment, and they did make adjustments. Once again, I'm not here to actually speak to the plan itself. I want to highlight that there was a plan. They presented a plan. They got community input from the plan. They adjusted the plan, and we haven't received any such plan as a whole from our charter school advocates. So they're asking for dollars. However, they're not saying, one, as IPS did in their Rebuilding Stronger plan, they're not saying what we're going to do with each age group. They're not saying what we're going to do when it comes to special needs. They're not saying what we're going to do from a brick and mortar building perspective. They're not bringing any of that information to the community, to the public. They're not bringing any of the, when you look at the academic data and everything that IPS had to present, and they're not bringing that either, but yet they're demanding the money. So when we look at it, we said at very minimal, say, well, where's your plan? We should at least ask questions. Why did we have 23 charter schools that closed in the calendar years 2011 through 2017? We should ask the question, um, what happened the years prior to 2011? Charter schools had a 10-year period before that. What are the numbers as far as charter schools that opened and charter schools that closed before 2011 and then subsequent to 2017? So, up to current, how many charter schools have closed? We need a moratorium so we can collect that data. I recommend a moratorium because there's too many unanswered questions. It's interesting that there's so much discussion, but you don't have anyone bringing facts and data to the table when it comes from the charter advocacy side. What I think is interesting and I think is important is that what at least the IPS superintendent did, Miss Johnson, she at least came out and said, we need the resources for IPS. Anyone who's looked at that school district, anyone, whether you're looking at it from the inside or looking at it from the outside, no one can doubt that that is a district. When we look in Marion County or even our surrounding counties, if any district needs to be that needs any dollars or needs funding, it will be that one. What we've done over the past few years, especially since this charter movement, is IPS has had so much shuffle, disruption, schools closing. I mean, that's across the board. Schools moving, charter schools coming, charter schools closing. It's disrupting our students, it's disrupting our families. Out of all those schools that closed in the years 2011 through 2017, what happened to those students? We had the chamber that supported a transportation. They had a transportation plan that was a key component of them supporting the last referenda. What are the results of their transportation plan? Did it save dollars? Did it help students get to schools? Did it improve the attendance rate of students? What did they get any feedback after we've done this? After we've said for most students in IPS, you're going to have to ride Indigo. How did that work? We know there's a lot going on with Indigo. How did Indigo's issues affect our students and our families? What's happening with those students that are being there that are being disrupted every other year? We're seeing a new plan. We just had referenda dollars that were given just, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. Now they're asking for more. And yet the charters are asking for money without saying, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to spend it, here's our plan for the next however many years. But what we do have in every charter situation, they pretty much have the same template. They're saying, here's how we're going to start. And remember this, they say we're going to start small and we're going to increase as we go on. We're going to add grades, we're going to add students. That's the model of charter schools. That's also the same thing that is hurting our charter schools because they are small and they can't sustain themselves. So let's get wise. Let's not just give money because we believe the rhetoric that they are public schools. We need to dive deeper, and we need to say, let's look at this system. Let's stop. Let's take a hard look at it. Let's not just throw money and then 10 years from now, our students are even in worse situation, and that's going to affect everything from public safety, economy, everything else is going to fall out from that. So we just want to say keep your ears and eyes open. We want to be praying for those students and those families there at the Edison School of Arts as they're going through this time. We definitely want to keep them in prayer as well. And we want to pray that they do the right thing for those families. So for our Radio One audience, we're going to have to let you go, but we do have a special guest that's going to join us at the top of our 8 o'clock hour. We have who was a candidate for mayor, Greg Meriweather. As of today, he has now withdrawn his candidacy for mayor of Indianapolis, and we're going to have him in just a couple of minutes, and he's going to talk about that. But our Radio One audience, we want to say God bless you, be blessed, and we'll see you on next week. Mr. Meriweather.
How you doing, Reverend Alexander?
I am doing fine, sir. I'm glad you could make it today. Uh,
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, hey, I drove down to Kentucky today and I was thinking about my interview with the candidate for mayor of Indianapolis. And I get back late and it's like I'm looking at the CNN ticker, the MSNBC ticker, the Fox ticker. I mean, even Fox, everybody. I mean, it's like there's a huge announcement in Indianapolis. So I'm just going to
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of set it up like that. Already kind of said that you were a candidate, but go ahead, kind of share what was your announcement today, and we'll kind of dive in it from there.
Sure. Today, thank you for having me, first of all, and hello to Indianapolis. Um, I announced today that I was withdrawing my candidacy for running for mayor of Indianapolis and that I would be um, channeling my endeavors and my energy into the Robin Shackelford campaign. So that's the news.
So you made that decision.
Sure.
What led to that? And I'll say a lot of folks watched you, and a lot of people were really watching because they knew that you could come in, and I'll put it like this, maybe shake some things up. So
Sure.
what kind of led to this point in the decision making behind it?
It's a matter of sitting down, having the conversations. Robin and I met initially, probably in around November. Um, I think that mentally, I was just totally focused on just being that the voice that brought issues to the table. For all the advocacy and activism that I've done in the city, a lot of it may stir some people the wrong way, but when it's all said and done, if they know, um, chew on it for a while and ponder over it overnight, they'll find that Greg Meriweather is he's tough on certain things, but his heart is in the right place. And with this being said, I didn't want to, we have a saturated primary, and I think that that's very challenging in the Black or African American community because you had so many people to choose from. And then from a Democratic Party perspective, I just wanted to narrow it down and put my energies and efforts behind someone I believe can do the job. Outside of myself, someone that I believe could do the job. She has a name. She's been in legislature for 8 years, or probably longer than that. But she's been a state legislator for a while. Um, recognized, able to do the job, has done some great things. And I think taking my grassroots efforts and channeling them to her and being able to work with her is definitely something I believe can push her over the top to allow her to become the first Black mayor of Indianapolis.
Were you getting some love on our Facebook feed there, Mr. Meriwether?
You
Which
know,
which is good.
yeah, it's tough, Pastor. It's tough, Reverend, because I know that there are some people who truly support it. On the back end, Indianapolis is a tough town, and I think that we're so used to it being a certain way. And people, I just hope that we learn through this that it is time to shake things up, because if we don't, and I'm talking about in the Black or African American community, if we don't pick the right person as the mayor of Indianapolis, it's going to be a tough, tough city for us to remain in if we do another 4 more years under this current administration, because housing is bad, our job situation is bad, our income situation is bad, food deserts are bad, crime is bad, infrastructure is bad. And when you're on the bottom, it's easy to do the work to get rid of us, you know, and basically we're being, I believe we're being overlooked and basically cast aside by the current administration. And so I believe that taking my energies to help Robin become the first black mayor of Indianapolis is necessary at this point.
There is a lot of frustration that you do hear from the current administration. You actually see, well, I put it like this: you see a lot of activity going on now with the current administration.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna ask this question this way, and you probably won't get it. I don't think anybody's gonna ask you, but I'm gonna ask it this way: how do you come in and shake things up, and then provide unity at the same time?
You know, I think that you shake things up by basically having a message that's real, it's transparent, it's honest, it's on point, provide the data, the information. Because what you find is most people argue points that are opinions. They're not necessarily true points that are able to make progress. Um, a lot of the things that go on in our community, most people don't really know. It's interesting how they say, well, we know that. And I'm like, well, if you know it, what would cause you to continue to vote the same way? If you realize that we are number one in poverty, number one in unemployment, number one in food deserts, number one in home loan denials, last in median household income, and last in housing, then what in the heck would make you take a picture, be a prop, be able to spew out rhetoric, share his information, hug him, dance with him, or anything when you truly realize that the position that you are in under this administration? So I believe by giving the facts will shake it up and then bring unity based on the facts.
A lot of, well, I mean, you really you hit it on the head there. When you look at our discussions, facts are either thrown out the window. You can't bring them up. They're not even an afterthought. It's like we don't, no, you don't bring that to this table.
Oh
You
yeah,
don't
you'll
bring,
take a whooping for the
yeah,
facts.
you don't bring facts to this table. And
That's
it,
right.
that even, it goes into the discussion I was just having, before you came on with, the referendum and the impact of the charters. We're having all these discussions, and no one's saying, bring data, bring facts. Matter of fact, let's evaluate this. Let's just take a moment and evaluate. I'm not,
Agreed.
don't I'm not saying don't shut down any charter, don't do anything with anything existent, but
True.
let's evaluate.
I agree. I think that's so necessary. You are absolutely right. When the truth is never on the table, we should become more aware of that. The thing is, when I think about this, Reverend, the day of the cream of the crop seems to be over in our community. We used to pride ourselves on sending the men who represented the community in a positive light, men who studied, men who cared, men who could articulate the pains of black people are now being cast aside for men who have no clue, men who still want to be a certain way. We have allowed our community to flip it, because I will say this, and many will get mad about this. Mayor Hogsett to me has made it cool to go to prison, because those are the people he wants to employ to be the guide for the future. And when you look right now, 90% of your schools have returned, and this is nothing knocking returning citizens, but I have a problem with people teaching or being in there if you didn't want to be there when you had the opportunity to be there. But now they've made it to where a guy who comes from the hood, who is successful, who went through the same rigors, the same struggles, the same issues, and came out of it. This administration says these are not the people who can go speak to the youth. You have to be a person that goes in the inside and speak to the youth, not the people who survived the same thing. And so when I look at this situation with what's going on, the crime prevention thing to me is way off base. When I look at the things that are being, the money, the $41 million that have been placed into the streets for certain programs, you don't see the change. I've complained about potholes. I've done the due diligence of meeting with people in DPW to see that they are throwing hot mix in the day on Friday when it was all rain, or when they were throwing cold mix and not cleaning out anything to make sure that the pothole was treated properly. And so there are a lot of things and angles that are being done by this administration that we don't know the information about. But when the information is given, he puts enough people in play to basically combat the truth, and we get on board with it simply because that person is in a position with a microphone to basically say what others are saying is a lie.
All right. How do we get this unity piece? I mean, you talked about the shake 'em up piece, and
Sure.
when you shake stuff up, I'm telling you, I know. Okay, I've been a shaker upper a couple times. When
Yes,
you
sir.
shake stuff up, uh, people don't look at it from even talking about when you talking about education. As
Yeah.
soon as you start talking about it, well, you're not for education. You're not, but no, but we're for a good education for all, not just a
Yeah.
select few. But it's such things such as that. How do you do that? You mentioned you started off early on talking about the climate of Indianapolis and the political climate.
Sure.
That's a tough
Yeah.
nut to crack right there, brother.
Yeah, it is. But I think, by unity comes, it's everybody wants to be associated with a winner. But I think that Indianapolis has to understand what a win is. If I look and I start creating equity, and I start seeing more thriving black businesses, when I start seeing more things thriving for the Latino community, when I start seeing change in homelessness, more people get on board with a winner. You have to have the formula for winning to create this thing of saying unity comes by way of that. Um, I think that we have a mayor who is more divisive because he understands that by dividing people, he wins, not by unifying. Because if we unify, then he has to go. So I think that when it's all said and done, with Representative Shackelford and myself, I believe that by coming together, we've been two people who have had differences, and we've probably had many differences over a period of time. But at the end of the day, I believe that we have to find our common goals and say, are our differences bigger than our commonality? And when we came together, we realized that no, our differences are not more prevalent than our common things. And I think that that's what we have to do in our community. We have to say, what is it that matters most? And if it works, then that means we have to come together to do it. And I think you just have to give a formula of unity and what that looks like based on the things that we all have in common.
I think that also affects our voter participation.
Absolutely.
We look at Marion County, whether it be a general election, whether it be off year, whatever. They're poor, and then our primaries are that much more poor. I'm not even sure
Sure.
if we're making 10%, if I
No,
remember.
not even close. Not even
Yeah.
close. We're around 30,000, maybe 50 if we play around with it, but 30,000 is the number that I always hear, and that's abysmal for a city that almost has a million people in it.
How can we get people to the polls, especially in a primary?
Reverend, one thing I would love for you all to do as people who have a platform. One of the biggest things that I'm going to urge, even with the Shackelford campaign, is we complain a lot about a lot of things, but we complain without participating. One of the biggest things I said, registering to vote is just as important as voting. Holding your political uh, the person you vote for, the people we vote for, even if we don't vote for them, whoever wins that chair, the other part that's equally important is the accountability part. But I would love to see this campaign take the approach of saying you must register first because of the judicial system. Because if you're not registered, you have no legs to stand on when someone that you believe should go to prison for killing, even if it's the police, if they hurt someone in our community, you can't even say guilty or not guilty because you're not registered to vote to be able to sit in a jury box. That is first. So if we registered to vote, then we have the ability to have an impact on the judicial system first. Voting is the icing on the cake because at that point, then you put people in position that operate as your voice. And we also need to do this thing. We need to we also need to make sure the accountability piece, I believe, is the cycle because if people realizes their voices are being heard and basically the things that they want to have in their communities are being done by the person they elected, then I think more people will operate that way. We have to challenge our politicians, which I've always done, to let them know that you don't operate autonomously. I've had tons of arguments with some of the legislators that we know and love, and I say, you're not an autonomous person. You're our voice. And most of them tend to disagree. I won't say their names, but it's a lot of them that we vote for to say, you don't run me. And it ain't a matter of running you. It's a matter that we chose you to do the job of being our voice. And I think that once people start seeing that politicians are operating as the voice of the people, you'll get a better voter turnout.
We can't wait for people to trust the system. That's
True.
not going to happen.
No, they're not going to trust the system.
We've got, and I'm not, I'm coming from a point of passion because I see, I'm looking, I'm like, we got to get people out.
We do.
So,
We got to get people
um,
out, but we got to get people out because we need to give them the education of why it's important.
we got to get them engaged. Yeah, we got to
Yeah,
get them
we
engaged
can't we
so they get an understanding of what
yeah.
what all this, how it works together, all
Yeah,
that
and
stuff.
we can't keep saying people. One of the worst. I'm a marketing guy. One of the worst things we've said is people die for you to vote. You know, I can't stand that statement because the truth of the matter is people die for you to be free. And when it's all said and done, when those people stuck their necks out and people were killed fighting for freedom, they were unable, this is civil rights 101, they were unable to sit in the jury box to say whoever killed that person that stretched their neck out for freedom, they were unable to say that person was guilty. That's why you look at the whole Emmett Till story. They couldn't say those men were guilty because they couldn't sit in the jury box. So we have to be registered to vote to change the judicial system. Then that system feeds over into the governmental system. And when we hold them accountable, then we change the system simply because we did our part in order to make it a better system.
Well, that is when we look at getting our community to where the community needs to be. If we can get there, I mean, that sounds great. I'm with you 100%. But we, I'm like, we got to act now. We need our folks to really open their eyes and not just see, there's a phrase, all politics is local. But when I see a lot of what's going on, a lot of the local stuff is just mimicking what they're seeing from a public or a national stage.
I would
And
agree.
we got to pay attention to that
I agree.
because what they're seeing from that perspective, they're utilizing it in the smallest of races from the local lists,
Yeah.
from municipality, all the you know and then we're gonna wake up one day and we're gonna be like, what do we just let happen?
Yeah, because I don't want Indianapolis to become like Oakland. You know, Oakland has the lowest black population that it's had in pretty much in its history, simply because it became too pricey for black people to live there. And I think Indianapolis. It's funny because even in their crime prevention thing, they went and got a guy from Oakland, and I said, what a waste of money, simply because I said he didn't change crime. Crime moved due to gentrification. And it's interesting that how many consultants that the city has had to talk about crime, but it's never been from a grassroots voice that lives in Indianapolis, that knows the streets, who is able to articulate what is happening in the streets. But Joe Hawk said, obviously does not want to see that happen. And the other part is this: if I allow organizations to continue, if I keep increasing the crime prevention dollar, that says something different to Greg Meriweather, because it says if I create companies, because I don't create a, if you create a company, I wouldn't create a company for temporary purposes. I create a company for longevity. So if I look at all these people are starting to create these companies and organizations based on crime prevention dollars, why would I prevent crime if this helps me eat?
That's
Just
something
my
for people to ponder, to look at. But I mean, that goes back to just simple voter education and really understanding. Here's what all this means. Here's
yeah,
really what it means. Here's what the
yeah,
result of that is,
yeah.
and um, and then operate from from the knowledge.
I agree. I agree, and that's. I mean, for yourself as a reverend, our people suffer for the lack of knowledge,
Mhm.
and our people are definitely suffering. But when you find out that most people are not registered to vote, people don't care about voting, people don't think it makes a difference. And in my investigation and being out here, it is abysmal to see it. But the other thing is this: I think that likability has also played a role in us not having forward mobility. I watched the mayor go into the store called Nap for Nothing or Nap or Nothing, and immediately he put a jacket on. And the brother that owns the store is a well known brother in the community, and he immediately changed his profile picture to Joe Hogsett, not realizing that he's only advertising for his demise. Because if you're number one, if you're last in all these major categories, or how DPW uh, says, the leadership of DPW says we endorse Joe Hawk said, but if you interview anybody from DPW, I know brothers who said I've been there 18 years and I've only had a $5 raise, but it's the leadership that says we endorse Joe Hawk said and not the worker. And so we have to stop being props and start investigating what is going on and realize when you are used for an election and not cared for after the fact.
If I could just maybe insert or add to your statement, the black leadership. It's our
Yes,
own
sir.
folks doing a lot of that stuff
Yeah,
to us. so,
absolutely.
so
Absolutely. It is so sad to watch, my brother, but it is real. It is so real. And what you realize in this thing is uh, most of them, it's individual gain while the masses suffer. And we can no longer allow that to be. I mean, we have to actually hold those people accountable and say, if you're representing us in high level leadership, don't you dare turn your back on us, because we need to be the people to say those people can no longer represent us. We can't allow him to pick who our leaders are. We have to pick them ourselves.
I think that's really a good word. A good statement for sure is we need to pick our own leaders. A lot of folks are saying, who's quote unquote the leader in the black community? Well, that you can't say the leaders got to come up and say, "Hey, I'm him."
Yeah,
The
yeah,
community has to raise this individual up and say, "Here's who we want to represent. Here's who we trust. Here's who we believe in." So,
yeah.
we definitely, appreciate you for coming on. I
Thank you
guess
for having.
now, you're gonna have more time to golf, huh?
Listen, I have more time to do a whole lot, man. But what I'm going to do, I'll tell you this, Reverend Alexander. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get back to my advocacy work, my activism work. I'm going to work with helping our dear sister become the first mayor first black mayor of Indianapolis, first woman mayor of Indianapolis. But my whole thing is this: um, being the mayor of Indianapolis, that holds its own title, but being mayoral for Indianapolis is a whole other thing. And my whole thing is this: I will be mayoral to Indianapolis whether I'm in the seat or not.
Well, that's it's great to hear that you still have that passion. You're still getting lots of love. Somebody even just put on there, you got a great book. So I haven't read it, but I guess I'm just gonna have to believe it, huh?
Go on and get it. It's called Utopia Black. But yes, great.
All right. All right. Well, man, I appreciate it. We definitely extend our blessings to you and well wishes as you move forward. And, whatever, you're doing, I'm sure we will be made aware. And
Thank you.
just keep doing what you're doing. Stay strong, stay encouraged.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you. And get folks out to vote. Get them
I'm
out
gonna be
to
out there.
vote.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, my brother.
All right, man. Will you be blessed to all of you in Facebook?